Someone just asked if you can take on one more project. And before your brain catches up, your mouth says, sure. Then you immediately think, why did I just say yes to that? Welcome to Ditch the Chaos. I'm Cara Chace, and this is your space to figure out how to run your life and business without running yourself into the ground. Today, I'm walking you through the 7 signs you're overworked that most women entrepreneurs miss, and why better boundaries won't fix it if you don't know what your real capacity is to take on more. So let's set the scene. You're already rewriting the same to-do list every Monday because those to-dos seem to keep getting bumped. You're already working through lunch and answering client emails at 9 p.m. You canceled plans with your friends last weekend because you needed to catch up. And now you've just added another commitment to a schedule that was already overpacked. Most women entrepreneurs I work with don't have a workload problem. They have a reality check problem. They genuinely don't know how much they can actually handle until they're already past their breaking point. The truth is, you can't manage what you don't measure, and you can't say no to things if you don't know what your actual limits are. Burnout isn't caused by one big yes. It's caused by 100 small yeses that you never stopped to think about. Now, before we get into the 7 signs, I need to address something. Because I know you're thinking, Cara, I already know that I need better boundaries. And look, most advice about overcommitting focuses exactly on that. Learn to say no, protect your time, set limits with your clients and friends and family, and I'm all for that. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know how much I love boundaries. And learning to communicate them clearly makes a massive difference in how sustainable your business and your life in general feels. But here's what else I've noticed. If you have decent boundaries and you're still constantly overwhelmed, the problem might not be that you need better boundaries. The problem might be that you don't actually know how much capacity you have to protect in the first place. Think about it. When someone asks you if you can take on a new client, launch that thing, or volunteer for a project, you do instant mental math. Do I have time for this? Can I make this work? What would I need to move around? And because you're a high-achieving woman who's been making things work your entire life, your brain confidently answers, yeah, sure, I can probably figure that out. The issue is that your brain is calculating based on fantasy hours, not reality hours. Fantasy hours assume that nothing goes wrong, that you won't get sick, that clients won't have emergencies, that your kids won't need you, and you'll work at peak performance all day every day with no time needed for thinking, resting, or handling the invisible mental load that comes with running a business and a life. Fantasy hours fool you into thinking there's time for just one more thing. Reality hours account for the fact that you're human, operating in an unpredictable life. Until you start calculating based on reality instead of fantasy, you'll keep overcommitting. Not because your boundaries are weak, but because your math is off. Most women entrepreneurs don't realize they're overcommitted until they're in crisis mode. These signs show up gradually, and because you're capable of pushing through, you convince yourself you're managing just fine, until you're not. Sign number 1 is you're constantly rescheduling your own priorities. You know what needs to happen. You've even put it in your calendar. But every week, your own priorities, like create new content for your website or send a client proposal or plan your meals for the week, those get bumped for someone else's emergency. That business strategy you were going to work on gets postponed because a client needed something. The marketing project you planned gets pushed back because you're still catching up from last week. The course sitting in your inbox that you paid good money for stays unopened because there never seems to be time. When your own goals become the thing that always gets sacrificed, you're operating at a capacity level where you can handle everyone else's needs, but never your own. You're still getting everything done, so it doesn't feel like a crisis, but you're only getting other people's things done. Your business growth, your strategic work, your rest, your health, those keep getting pushed to when things calm down, which never actually arrives when you're chronically overcommitted. Sign number 2. You're exhausted despite being quote-unquote productive. And here's the question that I hear constantly. I worked all day, I checked off to-dos, handled fires, responded to emails, finished a project. So why do I still feel like I accomplished nothing? It's because being busy and being productive aren't the same thing. When you're overcommitted, you spend all day reacting, putting out fires, handling requests, managing emergencies. You're productive in the sense that you completed tasks, but you're not productive in the sense that you moved anything meaningful forward. You end every day exhausted, but you can't point to what you actually accomplished, and it all feels like treading water because that's really what it is. When your workload exceeds your bandwidth, you shift into survival mode, and in survival mode, you're not building, you're just drowning. Sign number 3, you're making decisions from depletion. The decisions you make on Friday afternoon are different from the decisions you'd make on Monday morning. Friday afternoon you says yes to things Monday morning you would immediately recognize as a bad idea, because rather than evaluating whether you have room for it. This is decision fatigue, and it's a red flag that you're overcommitted. When you're constantly operating at the edge of your capacity, you stop making strategic decisions and start making survival decisions. You say yes because it's easier than evaluating, and you like being the go-to person. You take on the project because negotiating timelines feels like too much effort. You agree to the scope because pushing back requires energy you don't have. And then Monday morning arrives and you realize you just added more weight to a load you're already struggling to carry. If you're consistently making decisions that future you regrets, you are past your bandwidth limit. Sign number 4, your personal life becomes optional. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you worked out, or saw your friends, or cooked an actual meal instead of eating leftovers at your desk? When was the last time you had a weekend without doing any work? When you take on too much, your personal life becomes the overflow valve. You sacrifice sleep, exercise, social time, hobbies, rest, because those feel optional compared to client work and business responsibilities. But those optional things are what keep you functioning. They're not luxuries you'll get to later. They're requirements for sustainable performance. They fill your cup. You can't run a business on fumes while telling yourself you'll rest when things calm down, because that time never comes when you're chronically overcommitted. If you're consistently canceling plans, skipping meals, or feeling guilty every time you're not working, you're not managing a business, you're managing crisis mode, and that is not sustainable. Sign number 5, your body keeps sending you signals. How many headaches have you had this month? How's your sleep, your digestion, your nervous system? Your body keeps score even when you're ignoring the warning signs. When you're taking on too much, your body will tell you through tension headaches, disrupted sleep, getting sick more often, jaw clenching, digestive issues, or constant low-grade anxiety that never really goes away. Most women entrepreneurs treat these as separate problems to manage with Advil, melatonin, or doctor visits, and they don't connect the dots. Your body isn't broken. You're asking it to run at a capacity level it wasn't designed to sustain. If your body constantly is sending you signals that something's off, it's not a health problem you need to fix. It's a workload problem you need to fix with capacity boundaries. And I have to note here, of course, that I am not a doctor and I am not in any way giving medical advice. I'm just a woman who's been to burnout in my brain and my body more times than I can count, so I know what that looks like for me and many of my clients. Sign number 6, you can't remember the last time you felt ahead. And here's the question that stops most women in their tracks. Do you ever feel on top of things? Or are you always in catch-up mode? If you can't remember the last time your inbox felt manageable, or your to-do list felt reasonable, or you had breathing room in your calendar, you're overcommitted. Most women entrepreneurs live in a permanent state of behind. Behind on emails, behind on projects, behind on their own goals, behind on rest. Constantly, chronically behind. The trap is telling yourself that once you get caught up, you'll have space, or you'll do something differently. So you say yes to one more thing because you'll have time for it once you get through this busy season. But the busy season never ends when you're operating beyond capacity. You never really catch up. You just keep adding more to the pile. And if you genuinely cannot remember the last time you felt ahead of your work instead of just behind all the time, that's not bad time management. That's structural overcommitment. And finally, sign number 7, you resent the things you used to love. This one's hardest to admit, but it's the most important. You resent your clients. You resent your business. You resent your family for needing you. You resent yourself for not being able to keep up. You didn't start your business to feel this way. You started it for freedom, for impact, to create the life you wanted. But somewhere along the way, it became another thing draining you instead of fueling you. Resentment isn't a character flaw. It's a sign that you're giving more than you have to give, that you've exceeded your capacity for so long you've depleted yourself fully. When you start to resent the things that used to light you up, like your clients, your work, the business you're building, that's not burnout knocking on your door. That's burnout already in your living room. This is the sign that says you're not just taking on too much. You've been taking on too much for so long that it's fundamentally changed your relationship with your business. So you've identified you're taking on too much at this point. You probably have one or many of these signs. What's the instinct? To try harder, right? Better time management, more efficiency, stricter schedules. But none of that works if you don't know what your actual capacity is. You can't protect boundaries around something you've never measured. You can't decide what to say no to if you don't know what you have room for. Most women in business are operating on a gut feeling. I think I can handle this. This seems manageable. I'll make it work somehow. But that's not a strategy. That's hope and bad habits. The reality is you probably have somewhere between 40 and 50 work hours available per week before you start sacrificing sleep, health, relationships, or sanity. That's way less if you're a mom. That's not 60, it's not 70 hours, it's not whatever it takes. And when you subtract the time you already have committed to client delivery, business operations, strategic work, or blocks in your schedule like school drop-off and pickup and sleep, you're left with a lot less available capacity than you think. Most women who do this calculation honestly for the first time realize they're already operating way above their real capacity. And they've been wondering why one more simple thing feels like it's going to break you. It's not because you're incapable, it's impossible because the math doesn't work. And here's the thing, doing this calculation once in a moment of crisis won't solve the problem. You need a way to evaluate your capacity consistently, every week, every time someone asks you if you can take something on, every time you're planning what's actually realistic. Otherwise, you end up right back in the same pattern 6 months from now. Most weekly planning advice assumes you just need to organize your time better. Color code your calendar, time block your tasks, you've heard it all. That's helpful if you have a reasonable workload. But if you're already overcommitted, better organization just means you're drowning in a more organized way. The missing piece is learning to plan around your actual capacity, not just your time. Time is finite, but so is energy, so is mental bandwidth. So is your nervous system's ability to handle stress and switching between roles. You can have hours technically available on your calendar and still not have capacity to do good work. This is why traditional planning systems fail busy women with unpredictable lives, which quite honestly is all of us. They're built for people whose capacity is stable and whose weeks are predictable. When was the last time that really happened? If you're running a business while managing a household, dealing with interruptions, carrying a mental load, dealing with kids, and operating in constant triage mode, you need a different approach. You need to build your planning system around your actual constraints, not force your life to fit into somebody else's template. That means accounting for the fact that your capacity changes week to week. And buffer time isn't a luxury, it's a requirement. That saying no based on data will be easier in the long run than saying yes because of guilt. This is why Chaos Detox starts with capacity mapping. You can't build weekly plans that actually hold together if you don't know what you're working with. Not once, but as an ongoing practice that keeps you from slipping back into overcommitment by default. The weekly planning method we teach in Chaos Detox isn't about squeezing more into your schedule. It's about building weeks that don't require you to operate at 110% just to survive. Because the goal isn't to do more. The goal is to show up for yourself, your priorities, your business, and your life in a sustainable way so you can really enjoy what you're building. And if you're listening to this and thinking, okay, I get it, I'm overcommitted. I'll just be more careful about what I say yes to. I need you to just pause for a second. You've probably told yourself that before. You've probably had the moment of clarity where you realized you took on too much, promised yourself you'd be more selective, and then 6 weeks later, you're right back to the same pattern. It's not because you lack discipline, it's because you don't have a system or a habit for evaluating capacity all the time. When someone asks you if you can take on work and you're doing mental math in the moment, your brain defaults to optimism, that I can probably make this work response. Without a clear framework for what you actually have capacity for and what you need to say no to in order to protect that capacity, you end up making the same mistakes. That's the bad habit. What you're really doing is relying on willpower and intention instead of reality. And the women who successfully stop overcommitting aren't the ones with the most willpower. They're the ones who build systems to make the decision for them. They know their numbers. They have a criteria that determines what's a yes and what's a no. And they plan their weeks around protection and white space, not stuffing more in. So here's what changes when you finally start planning your capacity around your actual capacity instead of fantasy hours. Several things will shift for you. First, you can stop feeling guilty about what you're not doing because you can see that it literally doesn't fit. It's not failure, it's just math. Second, you start making decisions from clarity instead of depletion. When you know what you have room for, saying no becomes easier because it's based on reality, not just a vague sense that you're overwhelmed, but you could do better. Third, your weeks start to actually hold together. Not perfectly, life still happens, but you have buffer built in for the inevitable disruptions instead of operating at 100% where anything unexpected totally derails you. And fourth, you stop sacrificing your own priorities by default. Because you've accounted for your strategic work, your rest, your buffer time, those things have a protected place in your plan instead of being the first things to go when someone else needs something. And finally, your business becomes sustainable instead of something you resent. You're no longer running on fumes and willpower, hoping you can push through until some mythical later happens when things will calm down. The version of you who's still here in a year, still running your business, still showing up, still having capacity to grow, that version exists because you stopped pushing past your limits and started building around them instead. And here's what I need you to hear. You probably can't keep doing what you're doing. Not at this pace, not at this capacity, not with this level of overcommitment. Something will break. Either your business, your health, your relationships, your sanity, maybe all of them. And the question isn't whether you need to change. You do. The question is whether you'll change proactively while you still have some control, or reactively when you're in full crisis mode and you have no choice and everything is burning down around you. Most women wait until they're in crisis. I certainly have. They wait until they're so burned down they can barely function, until they've lost clients because they couldn't deliver, until their bodies force them to stop, until the resentment has poisoned their relationship with their work. The reason I know this is because I reached this point to where I had to take 2 years off my business to fully recover. I am speaking from hard-won experience. You don't have to wait that long. You can recognize the signs now, the constantly rescheduled priorities, the exhaustion, the decision fatigue, the disappearing personal life, the body signals, the chronic feeling behind, the growing resentment. Those are warnings, not inevitabilities if you don't let them be. And you can decide right now that you're going to stop operating past your capacity and start building around it instead. Not because you aren't capable of pushing through. I know you are. But because pushing through indefinitely isn't a strategy. It's just slow motion burnout. So here's your reset and reclaim action step for the week. Go through these 7 signs that I talked with you about today and honestly mark which ones you're experiencing right now. Not which ones you've experienced in the past or might experience someday, which ones are showing up right now in your life. If you've checked more than 3, you are probably operating way past your capacity. And it's not judgment, it's just good data. And data gives you clarity. Clarity gives you permission to make different choices. If you're ready to stop white-knuckling your way through your week, I'd love to have you join the Productivity Rebellion. It's my free monthly guide for women who refuse to choose between success and sanity. Once a month, you'll get one productivity strategy that fits your real busy life. You'll get behind-the-scenes stories from my month, not Instagram perfect advice, and a chance to ask me anything. I answer subscriber questions right here on the show. Think of it as your monthly reset when you're tired of holding everything together with duct tape and coffee. You can sign up for free at carachace.com/productivity-rebellion. Thanks for listening. If this helped, please leave a review and share it with a friend who's also been saying yes to everything. I'm Cara Chace, reminding you to keep questioning the rules and making your own. And P.S. If you're ready to build your own planning system that fits your real life and real capacity, that's exactly what Chaos Detox teaches. Not templates you'll abandon after 2 weeks, not rigid time blocking that falls apart when life happens, or my template that you're going to try and squeeze your life into. It's a method for building your own system around your energy, your actual capacity, and your real life, so your weeks hold together even when everything else is chaos. Learn more at carachace.com/chaos-detox.